Hello and welcome back. Well, not to the Indian Ocean, but uh, in the comments there was a suggestion that I would do a tutorial on Indian Ocean raid Defense of the East campaign, and it looked to me like a good idea. It actually will have to be in multiple parts because there's lots of things that I could talk about. The one that I would talk about today is basically about the units available and as I see their advantages and disadvantages and I believe you should get, what you shouldn't get, and so on. So let me start with that, and we will start with submarines. This is a USS Sargo class, surprisingly enough, submarine, and we can put it very quickly off. Don't get it. The reason for that is not because it would be a bad boat per se, but because it has Mark 14s, and Mark 14s you would really struggle to find the worst thing in early war than Mark 14 was. It's just horrendous. So if not this, what can we go with? We have the choices of Rainbow class, which is a British submarine, and then two other British D-class submarines, which are slightly bigger, and then a couple of submarines from our Dutch friends. Of all of those, I would say that probably the best thing is the Rainbow, because she's reasonably cheap. All the submarines are expensive because, well, they can be quite a formidable weapon. So they are worth 20 points each, almost 30 points, I believe. In fact, let me talk about the submarines here. So Sargo we've dumped, and she is very expensive for what she does. Like I would say that for given the propensity of Mark 14s not to explode, she should have been like 10 points at most. Oops, we're not there yet. Keep going in submarines. So this one Dutch is unavailable. Rainbow class is 28 and starts in Colombo, so here. And as I said, she is 18 knots speed, so she can get to the Straits of Malaya fairly quickly compared to the D-class boats, which have to start in Adu Atoll. Yeah, as you can see here, they are more expensive, although only by a point. They are slower, although I think the Group 2, no, she is the same. Group 2 at least has a test depth of 312, Rainbow has 360, so it's yeah, it's much deeper. Weapon-wise, they are 14 Mark 21s, sorry, 14 Mark 8s versus 18 Mark 8. So I would say definitely go for the Rainbow as one of your first units, because with submarine tactics you can do lots and lots of problems to the enemy, as we will discuss in our next tutorial. The next class that we are going to look at are destroyers, and to be honest, destroyers are destroyers. They are good at two things: ASW and getting shot at. The second one is actually, I would say, more of getting shot at and getting damaged and or destroyed, so they're actually not very good at it, as in surviving being shot at. I would probably include one, at most two, in some of my task forces, mostly because the only other option with ASW that you have are sort of corvettes and patrol boats, and they are slow. Destroyers are fundamentally very quick. Let me just say, this is Admiral TV, and she can do 34 knots, so she is a pretty good boat speed-wise. And the corvettes and similar that we will look at next, they are cheaper, but they are slow. So for escorting an ASW of your main task forces, well, you really don't have much of a choice. The only other choice is that some light cruisers do have depth charges, but I don't think that many of them have active sonar. So including 1 or 2 destroyers in your task forces is useful. Just be careful, they tend to be very fragile and they do get shot a lot at, so which is the reason why I wouldn't include many of them in. Which ones? Well, go for something that is cheap. Cheap and fast is good if it has sonar and if it has ASW capabilities. So Admiralty, ISW, all of those are good options. Don't spend too much points on destroyers because, well, there are better things to do than spending your command points, which you do not have a huge amount of, on destroyers. As I mentioned, the other option for ASW are corvettes. And this is Flower class corvette, which was really the principal ASW boat for Atlantic, and she is indeed a very good one. The only problem is that she costs about the same as a cheap destroyer, so there is not really a huge amount of reason to buy a corvette that costs 5 command points, where you can get a destroyer for 6 command points. So I would probably not go for this one, even as nice as she is. There is a good option with Bathurst or Grimsby or anything like that. So the other option is really patrol crafts, which are slow but much cheaper. I think this is 3 points, so that's almost half. That's half of the cheapest destroyer, and it's almost half of a Flower corvette. At the same time, she has decent speed of 12 knots, so she can't keep with all of the convoys that you would use them for, as opposed to the Flower, which can. But yeah, it's that's a choice. The advantage of corvettes is that they can keep up with most of the faster merchant ships. That said, I am not really that persuaded that you really need to have ASW for all of your convoys. A few of them which are really going through the waters where you would expect submarines might need to, but in many cases you can just run away from a sub, because unfortunately in this game there is no like a surprise attack by the submarine where you would show up and the torpedoes would have been already in the water a few hundred yards from you. Whenever you show up and you can't see a ship around, just max your speed, turn, and the chances are very good that you will avoid the submarine. It will take time to run out of that, but a big part of winning this game is knowing when to run. We've covered the smaller ship classes, and so we are getting up to the first, what I would call a serious class. And here is actually probably, I would say, the best ship that you can get for the points you spend in the Defense of the East. Unfortunately, you can get only one of them, and it's a Brooklyn class, a light cruiser Boise. It's an excellent ship, and I'm not talking about the model now. You can see she has 15 gun tubes primaries. She has a large number of, like 4 on each side, of secondaries as well, but that's not really one of the reasons. That is a very good thing, of course, although all of those are 6-inchers, like the primary guns are 6-inchers, but there is something yet more important. She has a massive armor. If you look at these numbers, 5 inches, deck 2 inches, magazine 6 inches, turret 6 inches, bridge 5 inches, that is comparable or better than most of the Japanese heavy cruisers. Like, let me get a, I don't know, Takao. 5 inches belt, the same. Deck 1.9, less. Magazine 3, we had 5 or 6, I think. Turret 1 versus 6, bridge 3 versus 5. Yeah, it's your armor is excellent. Mind you, it will not help you against the heavy cruiser, because the engagement ranges that you will have to fight to be good at are basically such that you will it doesn't matter whether you have armor or not, because to deal with most of those heavy cruisers you have to be about 13 to 15,000 yards, yeah, somewhere in here, and that's a problem. Let me just set up something. So here is my Boise cruiser doing nothing much. I've started moving it, and here is my enemy, a Tonei, which has, as you can see, 8 tubes to my 15 tubes. We are at about 14,000 yards. She's turning one way, I'll turn the other way. One thing you will notice is that we are firing a lot. We should be firing every 7.5 seconds approximately from the main guns. At least that's what the thing on the description of this ship says. Yeah, we are firing fairly often. Tonei, on the other hand, which we've hit already, is firing its guns only every 20 seconds. We are over here, you might be able to see us, we are hitting it badly. That's the main thing. We are hitting because we get way more in the air than she does. And I'm not saying that we will win this, because going broadside to broadside with a heavy cruiser is a problem, but you can see that we have already been hitting her quite a bit. She is damaged. We, I don't think, are damaged as well. Maybe, let us check. We are not damaged yet. Of course, she could always score a lucky hit and blow up my magazine. There is no telling on that. Yeah. But you can see that we are literally hammering her. She has fires, there are explosions, everything. So Boise, and she's firing torpedoes now. Okay, never mind. Boise is the only light cruiser that can sort of hold its own going against Japanese heavy cruiser. She is so good. So I'm not going to continue this fight. I'm going to move on our next cruisers. But first, you can still see that they still haven't managed to hit. Well, they have managed to hit us like now, but we are suffering only some very, very light damage, and she has heavy damage topside and minor flooding already. So we are winning this flight, and that's at a range of about 14,000 yards, where the main thing here is that she doesn't really, if she scores a good hit with her 8-inchers, then we have a problem, but we are putting in a way more ammunition in the air than she is, and that's what's making us win. Anyway, let's move on. And there is an added advantage that she starts in Colombo, so it will take her slightly less time to get to wherever we need to, as opposed to having to come from Adu Atoll. So what are the other options that we have as for light cruisers? And the answer is really not that great. Probably, like, forget about the Dutch ones. They are cheap, but they are not very good. Like, they have decent-ish armor, and they might even have some radar and so on, but they are underpowered in general. Java is probably better of those two. The main advantage, in my opinion, that they have is that they have depth charges. So you can pick up one of these and use it instead of a destroyer, and at 14 points it's probably a better choice to go with something like this than buying 2 destroyers. Mind you, 2 destroyers means 2 different targets, so there is a plus and minus. The Remaining cruisers, I would say that the town class is probably okay. She has decent armor, again, comparable to some of the heavier, some of the lighter armored Japanese cruisers. She has 12 6-inchers, so again, she is slower in firing, so that's not so great. And I believe that she has only one director, and that's actually a very, very big difference. Let me just get them. You see, one of these, Newcastle not available. And you see, let me get this one, and let me get a Crown Colony one. So done. Let's go tactical. Yeah, so here we are, Newcastle. She has two directors. You can see one here, one here. Mauritius Crown Colony has just one director, and that makes a lot, and I mean a lot of difference in being able to hit something. While the town class will likely have ability, solutions about 70 or 80%, Mauritius easily could have 40 or 50. It's that big a difference. So town class is definitely much better than a Crown Colony, even though on paper they look very similar, but they are not. So what next do we have? All of these, Abdiel, Caledon, Danae, they are sort of end of World War I and maybe early interwar cruisers. They are not great. They are, and you can see it from their cost. Some of them have sonar and therefore have depth charges. So Abdiel light cruiser she's slightly better armored than a destroyer. She has, let's go here. She doesn't even have better, like she's really destroyer leader. She is not a light cruiser. Yeah. Caledon, that's slightly better. She has a 6-inchers. She does have a sonar. Did she have? No, she doesn't have. But she doesn't have any depth charges. Danae, she has depth charges, 6-inchers. And she is okay-ish armor-wise, but again, she will probably have one director, so she will struggle to hit the barn door from inside the barn. Emerald and Enterprise are okay. I wouldn't call them great, but they are okay. Yeah, if I went to go for any of those other two, I would probably go for Emerald and Enterprise. Maybe even in preference to Crown Colony, and the reason for that is because they have depth charges, so I might save points on the destroyer. So those are our light cruisers covered. As for heavy cruisers, well, there isn't really much choice. All you have immediately to start with are two London class heavy cruisers. Eventually you will get Canberra, which is really the same, except flying an Australian flag instead of Royal Navy. And there are Hawkins class cruisers, which are interwar cruisers, which are not really that great. So get these two. They are okay. They are well, slightly underpowered, I would say, for a heavy cruiser, but not too bad. They're okay. You can get a few battleships as the next class up. At the start of the game, I would say that Warspite is probably the only one worth getting. They are similar in cost, but the Warspite, which is QE2 class, is the fastest of them. The Revenge class is really, they are really old, late World War I modernized battleships. But the Revenge class barely makes 20 knots, 21 knots. This at least makes 25 knots, so can do some speed as opposed to anything else. It's still, it will stand up to a Congo, it won't stand up to Fuso. Even with Congo, unless you have a heavy cruiser support, you would struggle potentially. Depends on who would get some lucky hits, I guess. Of course, then there is King George, but the problem with King George is that you won't get it until July, which is a good 3 or 4 months away from when you start the game. So by the time you get it, you've either lost the game or won the game already. So it's more like a fun thing to play with at that stage, but not really to use at the early stages of the game where it would be decisive or not. A ship that will make a difference to your task force right from the start. In fact, I would say it's a ship which will make the difference to your task force from the start is a carrier. And the British have access to 2 carriers, Illustrious class Formidable. I'll use the Illustrious because well, that's what the class is, and that's what, when you're looking in the museum, that's what it's called, and Indomitable. They are very, very similar ships. There is one major difference between them though, which is the complement of their carrier air group. Illustrious has 12 martlets and 21 albacores and 12 troopers. Indomitable has 16 Sea Hurricanes and 24 albacores. So it has 3 more albacores, which may make a difference. It's 3 more torpedoes potentially, or 3 more planes they have to shoot down before they get to position to attack. But more importantly, it has 4 more Sea Hurricanes. And that's important in 2 different ways. One, Martlet versus Sea Hurricane. Martlet is a better fighter, I believe. Speed-wise, it's about the same as Sea Hurricane, but it has 4 half-inch guns versus 8 303s. So in theory, assuming that the 303s are implemented correctly, which they might not be, but I believe YRT mentioned that they are, the half inches should have more stopping power, especially against bombers. But in general. So that's one difference. The other one on Sea Hurricanes versus Martlets is that Sea Hurricane has a range of about 470 miles, I think, nautical miles, while Martlet has a range of about 700 something. So there is substantial 300 miles difference. That's quite significant. That means that you can send the cab much further than you would be able to send the Hurricanes. But when you are sending patrol planes to scout around, or scout planes, whatever you want to call it, from your task force, if you're sending them from your carrier vessel, it will use the planes from your fighter wing of your CAG. So it will use your Sea Hurricanes or your Martlets. If it was using Fomers, that would be great, but it doesn't. It uses the Sea Hurricanes or Martlets. And that means that if you send out 3 Martlets as scout planes, and I would say 3 is probably the minimum you want to have out, then you've reduced your fighter formation from 12 to 9, and that's not much. You will be likely facing about 20 zeros or 20 plus valves or gates or something like that. For 9, 12, even with 12 it's stretch. With 9 it's really hard. When you do the same with 16 Sea Hurricanes, then of course you still have 13 Sea Hurricanes, which is not great, but it's still okay. Like, sort of, you can deal with it. It's considerably more. So that's something to consider, because it very much depends on how do you want to use your carriers. Whether you want to add a light cruiser with more with scout planes that will do the scouting, or what do you want to do? Yeah, but we will discuss this in sort of a tactics episode probably a bit later. In the meanwhile, British have also one more carrier, which is 20 swordfishes on Hermes. Hermes is a very nice model. It's a very nice ship. clean everything. It's an old ship, but it's a very nice one, nevertheless. Uh, and swordfishes, while being old biplanes, are nothing to be sneezed at, really. I really like the plane, and they can pack a punch. They were actually very successful planes during the World War II, and they can be successful here as well, attacking en masse. The problem is that if you do get swordfishes and anything else that flies and can shoot them down, they're toast. Like they are very good attack planes, but they cannot they against any sort of cap, they will just die very quickly, and again en masse. So that limits how you can use Hermes. Basically, you can use it only against the targets which do not have any cap, and that can be tricky. Again, I will discuss this later in a different episode on tactics. This pretty much covers all of the ships, all of the warships that we have, and I will end this part of the tutorial here. I am going to do more episodes on this. The next one will be logistics. So we will be looking at the merchant shipping and oil shipping and how to get things to your bases efficiently and so on and so forth. There it's really about numbers. So you will see some spreadsheets actually. But it is important, especially in the defense of the East scenario, where you have 3 different ports which create supplies. You need to get them somewhere. Logistics is important there. So there will be a short episode of that, because while it's boring, it's important. I will probably do then an episode on tactics and strategy. The question is whether I will do 2, one on tactics, one on strategy, or whether they will be sort of short enough to cover both. Probably not, so we might have 3 more episodes on this tutorial. If you have any questions or if you have any suggestions, please do put them in the comments, and I might even do a Q&A if there was enough questions. But if not, then I will try to answer those questions separately in those 3 coming episodes. Hope you have liked it, hope you found this useful. If you did, please consider putting in a like, a comment, and especially if you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing, because subscriptions are very, very useful for the channel. It gets more people to see it, obviously, and everything, and it will be probably the best Christmas gift for me with the Christmas coming in. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you with the next episode in our tutorial sometimes later. Not too far in the future, because I'm going to have some time now, so I'll probably put quite a few of these tutorial episodes out in the next week or so. Again, thank you for watching, and goodbye.